All right, famous UFO researcher Richard Dolan recently went on the Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp and had a wonderful conversation about Richard's new book, as you see on the screen right here, that he's got out about USOs, y'all. Yeah, he's been working a long time on this book, and I'll put a link in the description so you can check out the full interview. But I've got a couple of clips that I thought were very interesting from the interview. Now, this book that Richard put out about USOs is fascinating because USOs has kind of come into the forefront a lot recently in the UFO community, but Richard was looking into this before that, and the extent to which he put into putting this book together and all the cases, again, whether or not you believe it or not, right? Like, it's just respect for putting this amount of due diligence, which he always does. Richard has a list of other books here. You can see he's quite the author. He's got tons of books out that he's put out. I mean, he's probably my favorite UFO researcher of all time, right? And full transparency, someone from his PR team, for him out promoting this book, reached out to me through email to offer me a interview with Richard. So I responded a big yes. So hopefully that happens. Richard, if you're seeing this, I would love to interview you. I respect you a lot, and it would be great to have you on because I would love to talk to you about so many things, but USOs in particular. And this brings me to my first clip, which is this conversation that is around alien bases. You see, I love this stuff, okay? Because that's where it's at for me. Okay, some sightings under the water, great, very cool. I agree, very interesting. But bases, okay, alien bases, let's get to it. And what Richard has to say is fascinating because he starts to just name off places that I've never heard before, where allegedly there might be some underground alien bases, underwater. I guess they could be underground from the water. Anyway, play the clip.
Your book makes a great point about certain hotspots, that being one of them. You know, the Bermuda Triangle, for all the furor over whether that's a legitimate mystery or not, off of Puerto Rico, off of Southern California. You have some great information about the nature of these hotspots. It suggests that maybe there's a base there. That's why people see them so often in the same spot. Could we detect them if there's a base there? I know you make the point in the book that only 5% of the deep ocean has been sort of mapped, the floor of it, I think. And I know that there's some current mapping exercises that they're trying to cover the whole thing. Would we be able to see them if we were actually looking?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so one area where I would look for a base would be the massive deep Puerto Rico Trench, which goes down more than 5.5 miles. And I doubt that our mapping project is going to get down to the bottom of that. Maybe they will. Who knows? I don't know. We have a long way to go before we can map that whole floor. So the ocean floor, I think I learned this from Tim Gallaudet. So this is what he said to me. 25% of the ocean floor, 5% of the volume. I'm thinking even 5% of the ocean volume, that's a lot to me. That's a lot of volume, but only 5%. So,
that is an interesting fact that we have explored very little of our oceans, our water, right? There is so much that is unexplored. They even say there's an unexplored area in the Atlantic that is the size of a continent, right? Like, there is just so much of the ocean we don't know about, which is kind of crazy to think, when you put it in perspective, because we're out trying to explore space, other planets, the universe, yet we haven't even explored our own planet. I mean, we've explored the planet, but we haven't, explored the oceans, which is such a big part of our planet. Okay, we've explored the oceans, but you know what I mean? Like, we haven't explored all of the ocean, just barely nothing, hardly nothing.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity to find a base, I would imagine, but personally, I looked for any kind of hint of alien bases. And the best that I could find were a number of researchers over many years offered their conviction that there was a base in this location or that location. So one, I think pretty much everyone thinks that there's a base near Puerto Rico. I would say probably to the north of that island is my best guess. But that island is like the king of USOs. There's just so much activity going on there, particularly in after the 1970s. It's just crazy. Catalina Island, the whole Channel Island area is obviously very active. In fact, I'd say the whole California coast is very, very active, going right down to Baja, down by where the Nimitz was. But then what most people don't really think about in terms of at least the Western Hemisphere is the northeastern coast of the U.S. It's incredibly active there, going up into Canada as well. When I had all my little pins from my Google Earth for every little case that I tracked, and that area is extremely dense. The Gulf of Mexico, I'm just going to call it that, very active. And then leaving the Western Hemisphere or South America near Buenos Aires, I think there's a lot of reason to think there might be a base there. Going over to Europe, I know there were European researchers who believe there was one in the Bay of Biscay, which is off the coast of France in the Atlantic. Maybe the Black Sea, I would absolutely say yes, I would believe that, looking at a lot of Soviet cases that I studied. And then somewhere in or around the South China Sea, I don't know exactly where it would be, but I think there's got to be something there because there's a lot of activity out in that part of the Pacific.
So basically everywhere, right? I mean, holy cow. I hadn't heard about this one, the Bay of Biscay. I think Richard just likes saying that word. I do too. In France, you got China. He's saying in the Black Sea, pretty much guaranteed in his opinion that there's a base there, right? Puerto Rico, Argentina, he said Baja, whole coast of California, and we've heard Baja before. I've covered that on this channel many times. Danny Sheehan bringing that up, and even Tim Gallaudet. I've covered these underwater alien bases because they're my favorite part of the USO story, right? Which is, unidentified submerged objects, right? So these UFOs in the water, essentially. The idea that there would be these bases. And to be fair, like, you hear all these bases, you think, okay, come on. So how there's that many bases? But if you think about it, that actually makes more sense than just like one, in my opinion, right? That there would be multiple around. But I would also say if they can travel the way they can travel, why even have a base here? I don't understand what's the point of the base, right? What's the point of it? Why have so many, right? If the way that they travel is such, right, there would be no point to the bases. Like, what's happening at the base? I've asked this before. What's happening at these bases on the day-to-day? What does a day in the life of an alien at one of these bases look like, right? What are the ships doing? Like, what does the base look like? Like, it's a storage, or when you say base, I think, they got conference rooms and warehouses and like, you know what I mean? Like, what is it? Labs, bunks for them to sleep in? Like, if it's just craft, you need a base. Like, what does it look like? That's what I would love to imagine. What this alien base looks like and what is happening there. And are they all different across everywhere, right? And if they can hide so well, like, I just don't understand the secrecy of that kind of base. Like, you would have it like that. Again, if they can travel the way that it's deemed that they can. So I guess I'm just trying to understand that. Now, there's a lot of theories about how they have these bases, because they use materials from Earth to create their orbs or drones or whatever they're calling them, right? They're UFOs. So they use earthly materials. So that's why the bases are there. They're really just manufacturing plants, right, to build these things going out. But then I got to ask, are there machines? Like, what do these machines look like that build these things, and how did the machines get here, right? Like, what's building or who's building or how does this look, right? I don't know. I just find the idea of alien bases absolutely fascinating for sure, and I would love to talk to Richard about it. Again, I just more like imagining what it's like what's going on there, like more than just like, hearing there's a base there and getting excited and then moving on from that fact. Wait a second, let's explore that. let's pull the thread here. What is happening at these bases, you know? So anyway, another point that Richard brings up is quite interesting, considering what I just mentioned about the bases and how they travel, right? Because Richard gets very excited in this next clip that I'm going to show you, because he's saying it's his biggest what-if thought experiment that he loves to talk about, his favorite one, right? A what-if, right? You do that in the UFO community all the time. What if this, right? So his biggest what-if. And again, if you want to hear more about different specific cases, USO cases, that kind of thing, watch that interview with Weaponized. You can hear all that. You're going to hear that on all these different, channels. I wanted to cover something that was a little bit different. So the cases or the bases, but let's get into this part at the end of the interview where Richard, again, brings up his favorite what if thought experiment.
What if, this is my favorite what if space-time manipulation, once you figure it out, it's like, oh, that's actually kind of easy. So then, if that's the case, all of the speed of light limitations, all of that becomes irrelevant. All these SETI astronomers, all these people blathering on, sorry, but about, oh, it's impossible, you can't get here from there, distances are too, okay, fine. So all of that becomes irrelevant. So if it's easy to get here from some other star, and if they're all in communication with each other, and they're all like, oh, wow, look at what's happening on Earth. So they might all be thinking, all right, we got to go check this out. It could be that we're seeing a substantial portion of their populations that are getting into their version of a car and going to check us out with the proviso that they're not supposed to disturb the natives. I mean, is that possible? I don't know. It doesn't seem impossible to me. I'm just speculating. But it could really be that there's a lot of them, that they're able to come back and forth easily. If they're able to create a proper method of, I think what Hal Puthoff called space-time metric engineering, if they can do that, then it seems to me a lot else will make sense, and we could be dealing with a substantial portion of them. They're not necessarily a few like outpost aliens that are here setting up shop, remotely. Maybe they don't need to do that. Maybe they don't need avatars. They could just come back and forth. I don't think that's impossible any longer.
You see, and it's Richard's own theory here, his own what-if theory that kind of debunks for me the alien bases. But again, he's also found evidence of those alien bases. But I'm just saying the idea that they would have the ability to travel as such, as easily as he just said, what is the point of those bases? You would just keep the base on your home planet, right? Why put that base in danger? Right. And if you just have your average everyday person alien, right, as he kind of put it, your average everyday alien jumping in their version of a car and getting here because it's so easy, what do you need the bases for? Right. Again, it just doesn't make any sense. And if they're not to interact with the natives, well, they're doing a bad job of it. Right. But I like his theory. Right. And I get it. Right. It makes a lot of sense. That makes more sense than the bases, if I'm being honest, right? But again, he's done a ton of research, way more than me, clearly, to put this together. So I would love to explore more about the bases with him, to be honest with you, which would be great. So hopefully that interview happens. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. We'll see you guys on the next video, Vetters. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace!
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.